It seems that I can only refine myself into a living puppet. This is a realm of mystical cultivation, and the kingdom, called the Dayou Dynasty, is ruled by bloodthirsty people. Daomen believe in external gods and seek immortality through the ritual of worshipping gods. In the deep mountains and steep mountains, there are demons inhabiting, a desolate temple and ancient temple, hiding evil spirits and artifacts. Fox immortals and strange foxes roam the streets and alleys of the city. There are various esoteric religions among the people that use the teachings to guide the world, bewitch sentient beings, lead to the breeding of evil deeds, and lead to widespread military robberies. Traveling through this turbulent world, EP1-10 obtained a treasure scroll called Invisible Secrets, which records various strange methods of refining puppets and manipulating dolls. After obtaining this scroll, he was filled with joy, thinking that he had found a way to enter the path of cultivation, but to his surprise, he fell into someone else's calculations. In order to survive, EP1-10 had no other choice but to refine himself into a living puppet, with no other way out. Keywords of the novel: seeking immortal through deception, starting from refining oneself into a puppet without pop-ups. Seeking immortal through deception, starting from refining oneself into a puppet. Download the complete set of TXT. Seeking immortal through deception, starting from refining oneself into a puppet. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Transmission of Een Master's Dharma. You are listening at novel FUL.audio. Chapter 1. Transmission of Een Master's Dharma. Night, Swayan City. In a quaint wing room of the He family mansion, the candles were dim and the ground was covered with broken limbs. If a stranger crashes into this room, they will definitely be frightened by the sight in front of them. But upon closer inspection, you will find that these limbs are all the trunks of wooden puppets. EP1-10 sat on a chair, making a puppet with a carving knife in his hand. Several well-made dolls were also placed on the table next to him. Under the dim candlelight, there were pale and colorless faces. These lifelike dolls were all handmade by EP1-10, in large quantities, and filled the entire room. They were old and young, both men and women, all maintaining eerie smiles. In the flickering candlelight, they were like living people, gazing together at EP1-10 sitting on the wooden chair. EP1-10 remained silent, using his nimble fingers to manipulate the carving knife, cutting wood like mud with ease, carving on the wooden dolls placed on the table. Occasionally some sawdust falls from the dolls. I don't know how long it took, but only a small half of the candle was left on the candlestick, and EP1-10 didn't stop either. He was focused and still working on the doll in his hand. It has to be said that his craftsmanship is very exquisite, using high-quality camphor wood as the material. After several months of preparation after drying in the shade, coupled with skillful hand carving, the initial prototype of this puppet has already taken shape. The puppet is obviously a male with a bright face and vivid facial features. If you look carefully, you will find that this puppet is exactly the same as EP1-10's own face. Then, EP1-10 took out a paintbrush, brushed his eyebrows and eyes, and the doll's face moved more and more, almost sculpted from his own face. The candlestick in front of the window stood still, with flames the size of bean flames swaying in the wind. EP1-10 was blown by the wind and couldn't help but cough softly twice. He stopped moving and instead used a knife to cut a hole in his fingertips, drawing inexplicable symbols on the puppet's body with blood, and began reciting unknown spells in his mouth. In an instant, the eerie bloodstains on his body disappeared, and at the same time, the facial features of this puppet also showed a hint of vitality. EP1-10's face also turned a bit pale, so he stopped his hand. It's done. He exhaled a long breath of turbid air, then pinched a seal, and a strange scene occurred. The puppet on the table moved. Cluck! It moves its stiff joints slowly and smoothly, like a real person. The wooden figure picked up the paper cuttings and linen clothes prepared by the side, put on a high hat and a linen clothes, as if they were mourning in mourning. This 9 deads replacing the difficult witch doll has been made. Although this secret doll cannot help me prolong my life, it is enough to replace me in blocking the sword weapon's calamity and avoiding the 9 types of violent deaths, which can also be considered beneficial. He reached out and picked up the 9 deads, replacing the difficult witch doll, carefully examined it, and suddenly, his face turned pale. He put down the doll, held it down on his chest, and coughed. Cough cough. He coughed a few more times, covered the corner of his mouth with a handkerchief, and when his cough stopped, he opened the handkerchief and took a look, only to find a hint of crimson blood on it. My body is getting worse and worse. If it continues like this, I probably won't be able to hold on for long. Is it really true that we can only use that method? As if thinking of something, he reached out and took out a thin booklet from his arms. The paper had turned yellow and looked a bit dirty. After opening it, you will find that there is no big word on this booklet, it is completely blank. He took a deep look at this booklet, which was a method passed down from the Immortal Puppet sect and named Invisible Secret Collection. It recorded various secret techniques for manipulating and refining puppets. Originally, there were dense handwriting, as well as some eerie runes and drawings on invisible secrets, but after he learned the recording techniques and deeply imprinted the content in his mind, the words and patterns on it mysteriously disappeared. The things from the Immortal Puppet sect are indeed strange. He muttered as he put away the lost text pattern of Invisible Secret Collection. As the eldest grandson of the He family, he has shown extraordinary wisdom since childhood. He has a secret, which is that he has memories of his predecessor, or rather, he is a traveler. At the age of 7 or 8, He-Ping's body suffered from a serious illness and a high fever. After experiencing the fever, he lost his memory. After seeing the doctor said it was soul separation syndrome, but this illness was not a problem. He-Ping, the only son of the He family, had lost his childhood memories and his mind was not damaged. The He family did not make any public statements about this matter. In fact, after the serious illness at that time, another soul from Earth crossed over and descended on this body. After crossing over, He-Ping spent some time adapting to his new life and found that his soul had penetrated into a world similar to ancient China. He roughly knew that this was a country called the Dayou Dynasty, and his family lived in a territory called Suiyan City. The He family was also the largest rice merchant in Suiyan City, and their family was extremely wealthy. As the only son of the He family, He-Ping lived a life of luxury from a young age. To be honest, this kind of life is very enjoyable, and he himself is also very satisfied. However, his life changed for some reason. It was winter, and He-Ping, accompanied by his servants at home, went out of the city to do business. On the way back to the city that day, one of his servants found a frozen old man in a nearby mountain temple. This should be a puppet show. It snowed heavily last night and ended up freezing to death here. The servant checked and found that when the old man died, he was still holding a puppet tightly in his arms, so he made this answer. It looks a bit pitiful. I have some broken silver here. Please help this old man build a tomb with the temple blessings and nearby mountain people. He-Ping was also kind-hearted for a moment, so he gave a casual command. The servants followed the instructions and brought in temple blessings and mountain people, giving them silver money to help the deceased old man set up a grave and bury it in a nearby cemetery. For He-Ping, this is nothing more than a small matter. Who knew that when he returned home and fell asleep by the bedside, an old man with a white beard appeared in his dream. The old man first bowed to him and said his own name was Worry-Free Life. He thanked He-Ping for bringing back his bones and even made a tomb and erected a monument. Sheng recounted his life story. When he was young, he enjoyed watching silk puppetry and was addicted to the technique of playing the bell puppet. Whenever there were performers in the market who came to play puppets, he would pester them to learn their skills and gradually learn a unique skill. As he grew older, he disregarded the opposition of his family and wandered around for a living, enjoying himself with objects and people. However, he drifted for life, lost and homeless, and ultimately fell to the fate of being frozen to death in a mountain temple. I am willing to die, but unfortunately, I have learned all the puppetry skills. If I cannot abandon them, I am willing to pass on this skill to the young master. Next, Weisheng informed He Ping of the whereabouts of a puppet's secret technique passed down from the immortal puppet sect and a secret book called Invisible Secret Collection that he had collected. That booklet is hidden under the big locust tree outside the mountain god temple, with 3 stones stacked on top. Dig down 3 feet to find it. After saying these words, Weisheng bowed again and turned into a mist. The next day, He Ping woke up with a clear understanding of the dream in his mind. Following the words left by Weisheng, he found a small booklet under the big locust tree outside the mountain god temple, which was the Invisible Secret Collection. When he opened it and checked it, he found that it was indeed a booklet that recorded various dolls made. He Ping is not very interested in puppets or anything else. The He family is a wealthy family in Suian City, and their wealth is said to be small. He can spend his entire life on food, drink, and entertainment, and it will take him over 100 years to sit and eat empty mountains. With such wealth, he couldn't possibly learn any puppetry. But he couldn't resist his curiosity. After reading the booklet for a while, he couldn't help but start learning the puppet techniques according to the records in the booklet, and finally learned something. After studying for a period of time, He Ping realized that in addition to the puppet-making techniques mainly based on paper, leather, wood, and pottery recorded in Invisible Secrets, there were also puppetry techniques such as water puppets, meat puppets, medicinal hair puppets, cane head puppets, cloth bag puppets, hanging silk puppets, and horizontal branch puppets, which far exceeded the skills of local opera performers. In addition to common puppet techniques, Invisible Secrets also involves secret techniques such as aversion to victory, restraint of qi, suppression of objects, relieving misfortunes, replacement of difficulties, and falsehood. In other words, these are not techniques at all, but methods. After receiving this booklet, He Ping thought he had a great chance. He devoted all his energy to studying the Invisible Secret in those years. Whenever he encountered a wall or a difficult problem, he would dream of encountering worry-free life again. This old man with white hair knows everything about him, and he talks endlessly, teaching him all the secrets he knows from Invisible Secrets. This is known as the Yin Master's transmission of Dharma in the Taoist sect. Although Weisheng has been dead for several years, he still passed on the Dharma intermittently in his dreams for several years. As a result, during those years, He Ping was obsessed with the profound and mysterious techniques recorded in the volume of Invisible Secrets. He studied tirelessly every day, but did not realize that someone had planned to sow trouble. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. I Learn from a Short Life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. I learned from a short life. He Ping studied Invisible Secrets for several years, and gradually realized a strange thing, which was that his physical condition was getting worse and worse. In fact, the techniques in Invisible Secrets have drawbacks, and practitioners should avoid impatience. Because according to the teachings of the Immortal Puppet sect, when making or commanding puppets, it requires the consumption of one's own essence and blood, and some of the techniques practiced are too damaging, resulting in a significant loss of longevity during cultivation. On the other hand, in recent years, he has been unable to dream of a worry-free life and cannot seek help from this Yin Master. Moreover, at this point, He Ping also realized that the techniques uploaded from Invisible Secrets had serious drawbacks. Unfortunately, it was too late for him to wake up at this moment. Due to excessive physical loss, my lifespan has not been much longer. He Ping was naturally unwilling to accept it. He thought of many remedies, such as searching for strange people and scholars, and practitioners, but he never found anything. He secretly sought out many famous doctors to seek medical treatment for himself, but the conclusions he drew were all very pessimistic. A famous doctor told him that his body was suffering from the disease of blood necrosis. There seemed to be a funnel in his body, and all the essence and blood gas were sucked into this funnel. No matter what good methods or techniques were used, this terminal illness could not be cured. Later, He Ping secretly asked someone to inquire about the news about the Immortal Puppet Gate, and was surprised to find that it was a secret cult that had been hidden for nearly 100 years and was strictly prohibited by the government. It is said that the government sent a large army to eliminate it. After receiving these messages, He Ping dared not reveal any information about his own affairs, fearing that it would attract influence from the government. Even if the He family has some power in Suiyan City, it cannot be compared to the government of the Dayou Dynasty. If there is any news, it will be troublesome for the government to arrest him as an evil cult. Weisheng may be a descendant of the immortal puppet sect. It's strange. If he really has this ability, why would he fall to this place? He Ping felt extremely puzzled about the later experiences of Weisheng, but at the same time, he also felt uncertain and uneasy about his future. Is it difficult? Can only choose the taboo secret method in the last chapter of Invisible Secrets. If I want to survive, I can only transform myself with puppet art, replace all my flesh and blood, and become a living puppet. He turned to the last page of Invisible Secrets in his hand, which recorded an extraordinary secret technique. Through this technique, which was labeled as taboo, he became an immortal living puppet. A living puppet is a puppet transformed from a human and requires the use of magic to replace the flesh and blood with the puppet's limbs, even the internal organs and other fragments. This has a benefit, firstly, because the body is a puppet, equivalent to immortality. The second is that no matter what kind of injury you may suffer afterwards, as long as you replace the injured part, it will not have any impact. If this secret method succeeds, I will not be a human, but a non-human existence. I will become a living puppet, and some of the happiness in the world will never be enjoyed. He Ping sighed in his heart. However, he also knows that he doesn't have many choices, and this taboo law may be his last path. If you're not a person, then you're just not a person. He secretly made up his mind. After all, I have learned from my brief life that human abilities have limits. Unless they surpass humans. That's right, that's a wise saying. However, when it comes to practicing taboo laws, one must also make sufficient preparations. The method of refining puppets by the immortal puppet sect is particularly time-consuming, financial, and material. In the past 2 years, he has spent a lot of manpower and material resources to find this 1,000-year-old camphor tree that is only found in southern Xinjiang, and made this 9-death replacement witch doll to prepare for this matter. Just before that, there's something I must figure out. He Ping remembered the old man named Worry-Free Life, who taught him invisible secrets. Now recalling the past, he couldn't help but feel puzzled in his heart. My contact with Weisheng back then, what happened in the mountain god temple, may there be some hidden mysteries. He felt it necessary to visit that mountain temple again and figure out the mystery hidden in this matter. Dig for me quickly, give me a little more effort. The butler of the He family, He Fusheng, shouted and scolded loudly. You guys haven't eaten yet, put more effort on your hands and feet. At night, there is no star or moon. A deserted tomb not far from the mountain god temple was surrounded by guards in black armor hired by the He family, holding torches. Dozens of servants from the He family, dressed in cloth and short combat, were holding hoes and working hard to dig a large pit in front of a grave. He Ping sat in front of a makeshift bamboo shed next to him, with a slightly sickly complexion. He was dressed in a white fox fur without any speckles, holding a cup of ginseng tea in his hands, and his face showed a hint of indifference. After a while, the butler He Fusheng excitedly ran over with a lantern in hand. Young master, the coffin has been dug out. Should we lift it up or should you go and see it yourself? Upon hearing He Fusheng's words, He Ping's eyes lit up. I'll go see it myself. Okay, young master, please be careful with your steps. Butler He Fusheng picked up the lantern and led him to the dug-deep pit in front of it. He Ping approached this solitary tomb, and a deep pit was dug out in front of it. Standing in front of the pit, he saw a 3-inch thick thin coffin as soon as he saw it. This thin coffin is made of cypress wood and is the preferred cheap coffin for the poor. There is a common name for it, dog meat's head, which means that when encountering wild dogs searching for food on the disorderly burial mound, it can be pierced with just a few heads. Open. He stood outside the pit and ordered a few servants to pry open the lid of the coffin. At the moment the coffin lid was opened, a musty and rotten smell wafted out of the air, and everyone instinctively retreated. At that moment, Ping jumped down, holding a lantern in one hand and covering his mouth and nose with a cloth soaked in medicine in the other, bringing him closer. Surprisingly, inside the coffin, there was no corpse that had turned into white bones, but rather a tattered old man with white hair. Worry-free. Ping stared fixedly at the immortal corpse, his eyes deep and gloomy. He released the cloth that covered his mouth and nose, extended his right hand, and groped on the old man's body. He pressed down on his chest again, and found that his skin was soft and his bones appeared strong, as if he had just died. I see. He grabbed one hand and forcefully folded it at the joint, with a click sound, causing the arm of his little hand to break open. Ping raised the lantern, picked up the broken hand, and stared at the broken part, unable to help but laugh in silence. The human bones, muscles, and skin forged from thorough ghost wood are also made of shark skin and tree glue. Worry-free, you really deceived me, how miserable. He knew very well that the opportunity 10 years ago, as well as the Keen Master's transmission of Dharma, were all carefully designed scams. The frozen old man in the mountain temple is nothing but a forged corpse. In fact, I should have been able to imagine for a long time that if that worry-free student had truly mastered the extraordinary people and scholars in Invisible Secrets, how could his abilities have fallen to that level? This may be a game, I was designed from the beginning. The more Ping pondered, the colder he felt, and the more he experienced the shock. My body is deteriorating day by day, is it also designed to be difficult? The ultimate goal of the other party is to let me practice the last taboo law, hoping that I will sacrifice myself to become a living puppet. Suddenly, a spiritual light flashed in his mind and his heart sank. After conducting investigations through various means, Ping discovered that the Immortal Puppet sect was a force listed as a cult by the Dayou court, and this cult was skilled in making various bizarre puppets. I don't know why, but this evil sect offended the government and was annihilated by the army sent by the Dayou Dynasty. The court of this world is not simple. In theory, the inheritance of the Immortal Puppet sect is not weak. How did the Dayou court eliminate the Immortal Puppet sect? Ping also found that ordinary people in this world have a shallow understanding of supernatural intelligence, and the government seems to be secretly controlling and regulating information, strictly prohibiting ordinary people from exploring this intelligence. As for management methods, they almost start from the simplest books. The government of the Dayou Dynasty blocked papermaking and printing technology, regulated various types of books circulated among the people, and the vast majority of historical documents related to the previous dynasty were confiscated. In this context, the private collection of books by ordinary people is considered a crime, and the government has explicitly prohibited private individuals from making books without authorization. Books such as ying hexagrams, divination, and techniques are all prohibited and not allowed to be passed down. And due to the ban on books, the court also issued edicts to establish several large prisons, arrested many people, and beheaded many people. As a traveler, Ping has a unique perspective and delicate thoughts, which make him notice a slight abnormality. His feeling is that the government seems to be deliberately implementing a policy of foolishness to prevent the flow of knowledge. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Heart Exchange. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Heart Exchange. The upper echelons of this world completely monopolize knowledge, and books are something that the lower classes find difficult to access. Only a few privileged classes have the opportunity to access. Rich families like Ping, as well as aristocratic families, are not very restricted. After all, in order for the court to manage the world, talent is also needed. It is one thing to block mud-legged scholars from studying, but the officials who need to be selected cannot be illiterate. There is a hidden library in the He family's mansion for the clan to borrow documents. In the past, He Ping read a story from a strange anecdote compiled by literati from the previous dynasty. In that story, someone went out to serve as an official for many years and one day returned home to visit relatives, only to find that their parents, wife, and children had become extremely unfamiliar. That was an indescribable strangeness, as the family seemed to have remained unchanged, yet this person felt that everyone had an indescribable strangeness. This person returned to the house to rest. While half asleep and half awake, he heard his parents, wife, and children outside discussing when to kill him, and discussing whether to poison, stick, or stab him. The person immediately woke up in fear, pulled out a sharp knife, rushed out of the door, and killed all the people in the family. However, even after being stabbed, these people did not bleed and fell straight to the ground. This person was shocked, and upon closer inspection, he found that all members of his family were wooden puppets. He was both shocked and frightened, so he quickly went out to report to the government. When the official officer returned home with him, he saw the bodies of the entire family, scattered on the ground and bloodshed. He Ping furrowed his brow. Replacing living people and turning them into puppets is indeed like a taboo law. Is it possible that the secret method passed down by worry-free life is to turn me into a puppet and use the technique of manipulating puppets in invisible secrets to control me, the young master of the He family? If the other party's scheme succeeds, I am afraid I will be stiffened by Li Daitao and become a puppet in the hands of Wu Sheng, holding the identity of He Ping and unable to turn over forever. But why did the other party do this? In order to plot for the He family's property? No, it's completely unnecessary. What are some of the puppet techniques recorded in the volume of Invisible Secrets? What is the value of just ordinary wealth? Why bother the worry-free life of the immortal puppet sect circling around such a big circle, designing such a troublesome trap to lure themselves into it? Unless worry-free wants to achieve their goals secretly and doesn't want to cause any commotion. After obtaining the invisible secret, I secretly practiced without attracting anyone's attention, which happened to be what the other party wanted. He Ping thought through this section, but his heart was icy cold. In this immortal puppet sect, Wu Sheng has this ability and is probably not afraid to know about the issue of this corpse. Because even if I know the truth, I dare not speak up. Instead, because my lifespan is limited, I am forced to practice taboo laws and refine myself into a living puppet. Good calculation. He Ping Chang let out a breath, and he thought and turned a few times. His mind also calmed down. Indeed, I am now unable to control myself. The taboo chapter recorded in Invisible Secrets may be the final way to prolong my life. If I want to survive, I must sacrifice and refine myself into a living puppet. Of course, to replace the entire body, it also takes time. According to the description in Invisible Secrets, it takes at least 10 to 20 years of effort to replace the flesh and blood of the whole body. This process takes a lot of time, and I'm afraid I can't wait. So, for me, the first thing is to change my heart. My essence and blood are severely depleted, and my heart is also weakening. I need to change my heart. Yes, change it to a demon's heart. The first step in the living puppet ritual technique in Invisible Secrets is the heart-swapping technique, which requires killing a demon and using the demon's heart to refine using a secret technique. Finally, I will open my chest and dig out my heart, replacing it with a demonic heart. Demons are powerful creatures with a longer lifespan than humans and 100 times stronger chi and blood than ordinary people. In the 4 peaks outside Swayan City, there seems to be a mountain mandrill that often goes down to bring disaster to the people below. It happens that this demon has been slaughtered and its demon heart has been refined for me to use. He Ping has been preparing for this matter for over a year, and even if he now learns about the conspiracy of the immortal puppet sect, he does not intend to change his original intention because he has limited options. Of course, there is also a risk in doing so, which is that heart swapping may be a prerequisite for activating the hands of worry-free life. If I don't change my heart and refine myself into a living puppet, I can't prolong my life. If I succeed in changing my heart, then I may also be refined into a puppet by worry-free life. He Ping burst into a bitter smile. This is the real dilemma. Whether advancing or retreating, there is always a danger of falling into an abyss. Let's go. He Ping extended his broken arm back into the coffin. Young master, what about this coffin? He Fusheng approached and asked in confusion. Burn the coffin, wrap the body in cloth and bring it back to my mansion. In addition, give some money to the temple blessings of the mountain god temple, as well as the nearby villagers, to be honest and not say anything more to outsiders. He Ping waved his hand and gave a command to the butler He Fusheng before getting up and leaving the deep pit. A few days later, the He family made a big fuss, and the mansion was also decorated with lights and decorations, holding a banquet. The young master of the He family held a birthday banquet and hosted many guests. The mansion was also bustling with the sound of drums and gongs. The He family is one of the wealthy families in Suian City, living in the northern region for generations. In addition to selling rice, they also run businesses such as pawn shops, raw medicine, wood, and tea shops. They have strong financial resources and can be considered a huge wealth. The He family is hosting a banquet, which naturally has a great presence. Even if it is already late at night, the Changle Street where the He family is located is still brightly lit, and the front door is also bustling with traffic and visitors. He Ping's father has been dead for many years, but during his lifetime, he was skilled in dancing and befriended the government and the aristocratic families in the city. He also had private dealings with gangs and people in the martial arts world, which allowed He Ping to inherit the He family's estate safely. He is the only son of the He family and also the person in power of the He family. He called a banquet today and the guests were not simple. Half of them were famous aristocrats, swordsmen from the northern desert, gang leaders, or famous figures in the underworld in Beifu Prefecture. He Ping is also somewhat famous in the martial arts world, and he likes to raise guests in the mansion on a daily basis. Even if he is a commoner, as long as he has some talent and is willing to enter the He family mansion, he will open the door to welcome him. Occasionally, there are scammers who deceive and swindle, or city wanderers who impersonate high-ranking officials and come to see him. He Ping does not refuse, and his loyal servants often advise him to choose someone to treat. He only says that he will not ruin his reputation for treating guests with sincerity for a few petty people. Over time, He Ping gained a reputation in the outside world, and many people in Beifu Prefecture knew that he was known for his generosity, hospitality, and generosity. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Assassination. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Assassination. Apricot blossoms pass through the rain, gradually fading into red and scattered rouge colors. The fragrance of flowing water drifts away, making it difficult for people to touch the pulse of spring. I hate to bid farewell to the king and grandson, the walls are gloomy and my eyes are broken. On the stage of the He family's private residence, several actors with painted makeup are singing opera texts on stage. Below the stage are guests who watch and eat. The main table is located on a pavilion directly facing the stage. Those who can come here are all distinguished guests, including hermits and heroes, as well as wealthy guests from the northern desert. There are also several local gang leaders, and the guests exchange glasses and toast each other, creating a lively atmosphere. Young Master I have heard that the young master intends to hunt and kill the mandrill on Mount Siding. Is this the case? The speaker was an old Taoist dressed in a Taoist robe, with grey hair and a bun. This old Taoist is called the Red Ridge Taoist and is the leader of the Flying Fish sect. When he was young, he achieved impressive results with his red fish sword in Beifu Prefecture. Later, he established his own Flying Fish sect and gained considerable fame among the martial artists in the northern region. Indeed, He Ping played with a black fan and sat on the head of the east side. He nodded slightly when he heard the words of the Red Ridge Taoist. I heard that the mandrill on the four-top mountain is a disaster and extremely cruel. Over the years, it has often descended from the mountain to disturb people's livelihoods, either rushing into the village during the day to devour people, or entering the village at night, closing all doors. The local villagers are in constant fear and are forced to abandon their ancestral business and relocate to other places. Monsters like the mandrill originally inhabit deep mountains, which are difficult for ordinary people to encounter. However, the mandrill on Mount Siding loves to eat humans and often goes down the mountain to invade the local people, causing horrific damage. According to local residents, this mandrill initially only preyed on solitary hikers in the wild, but then became increasingly rampant. It often travels through the village and enters hospitals, searching for people to feed on, and sometimes even several people are present. This monster dares to attack people in broad daylight. In the most tragic story passed down near Siding Mountain, several households were invaded by mandrills in the middle of the night, devouring the entire family, old and young. As he spoke, his eyebrows furrowed slightly before continuing to speak. Nowadays, the mountain villages around Siding Mountain have all been relocated, and even the houses have gradually become dilapidated. However, the neighboring villages are far away from Siding Mountain, so there is no need to worry too much. However, in recent days, the merchants and convoys passing by Siding Mountain have been deeply affected. I see. The Taoist from Chiliang nodded. The He family is engaged in the rice business and also operates various profitable businesses. Every year during the Chinese New Year, the debt collection team travels to half of the county in Beifu Prefecture. Siding Mountain is also a commercial road that connects to the south. No wonder this young master of the He family is so worried. However, this mandrill is also a monster, not more fierce than an ordinary beast. The old Taoist is not talented. After the young master, the Four Peaks and one group can be considered as one of the old Taoist. The Red Ridge Taoist is also very bold. Thank you first, Taoist. He Ping smiled. I didn't expect that young master. He still has the intention of eliminating pests for the local area, so I also want to interfere with old Zhong. A burly and bearded man sitting in another chair also spoke up. We, the Huma gang, will also send people to join in the grand event of eliminating the mandarins. He Gongzi is benevolent and righteous, and the Iron Heart Martial Arts School is also willing to contribute. The middle-aged man sitting on another pear blossom chair, wearing a long shirt and with beards under his chin, also stood up and bowed with both hands. Master He, if you don't give up, Chongfeng Society will do its best to help. Another local gang leader stood up, and then several people voluntarily expressed their willingness to join the extermination operation. Thank you very much, everyone. He Pingshua put away the folding fan and stood up. He held the fan alone and clenched his fists at the guests. I have reported the matter of removing the mandible to the magistrate of this city, Mr. Sheng. Mr. Sheng also expressed that the court is also very troubled by the one-horned mandible on the four-top mountain. If this monster can be successfully removed, the court will also reward it. In addition, our He family is willing to offer a reward of 50,000 taels to serve as a bonus for removing the mandible and reward the few who have made the most efforts. As soon as his words fell, everyone present was in an uproar, feeling in their hearts that the young master of the He family was truly wealthy and powerful. In addition, anyone who participates in the removal of mandrills will receive a reward of silver. Any injured or deceased in the removal of mandrills battle will receive compensation from the He family. He Ping chuckled. Half of his intention for hosting this birthday banquet this time was to win over a group of people from the martial arts world to do it for him. According to his investigation over the past year, he found that the one-horned mandrill had lived for at least 200 to 300 years, and its ferocity far exceeded the understanding of mandrills by people in the martial arts world such as the Red Ridge Taoist. Xian Guimen also has some research on monsters, and He Ping is well aware that the demonic power of the unicorn mandrill increases with age. A 200 to 300-year-old unicorn mandrill, an ordinary warrior, is no match for strategy. Perhaps only the court can mobilize the entire army with military orders, prepare bows, crossbows, and arrows, and launch a large army around the mountains and forests, in order to possibly capture it. After all, the He family is just a merchant and cannot raise private soldiers. The best way for me to take this mandrill is to use silver to attack. As long as I give enough money, these martial artists in the martial arts world will naturally work hard for me. Money can connect with the gods. After He Ping presided over the affairs of the He family, he discovered the power of money. He remembered hearing a famous saying in his previous life, "A problem that can be solved with money is not a problem." This statement may not be correct, but sometimes it can be useful. To put it simply, my body is not suitable to personally confront that mandrill. He felt helpless as he socialized with the guests present. The stubborn illness in my body is becoming more and more serious now, and I cannot use puppet magic for a long time. If I act recklessly, it will lead to a reverse flow of yin energy and a more serious sign of blood leakage. I can only rely on the help of these martial artists in the martial arts world. Because he learned the techniques of the immortal puppet sect, He Ping was well aware of the significant gap between Taoism and martial arts. The gap between the two can be described as a natural chasm. The martial artists in the martial arts world have so little strength that they cannot resist their puppet magic. He privately befriended people in the martial arts world, and opened the door of He Mansion to attract disciples and diners, including talented individuals, commoners, and thieves. It was not that he had nothing to do with his leisure time and had nowhere to spend his money. The true intention of He Ping was to search for truly extraordinary people and scholars, and to find those practitioners who had hidden themselves in the world, but this idea has never been fulfilled. In all these years, I haven't encountered any other cultivators. At most I've only heard some folk rumors, which is really strange. Suddenly, an angry scolding sounded in his ear. "Evil thief, I want you to pay for your life." As He Ping turned around, he saw a young servant in green clothes holding a plate at the banquet, suddenly pulling out a dagger and stabbing him fiercely. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Huma Gang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Huma Gang. Compared to the sluggish senses of sight, hearing, and smell, his divine soul felt the sharpness of the dagger faster. Assassinate me. He Ping's heart moved and his thoughts flowed rapidly. He was the only son of the He family, and after his father's death, he became the sole ruler of the family's wealth. Of course, there are also many outsiders who covet the wealth of the He family. In addition to outsiders, there are also people from their own families. For example, the He family has several branches and is very sensitive to the distribution of benefits. After the death of He Ping's father, there were also some incidents. Furthermore, the He family has a large business and has made many friends, as well as many people who have offended them. He Ping himself has also been assassinated several times, but at least he is also a member of the immortal puppet sect who has cultivated the invisible secret collection. Even ordinary people's assassination methods cannot harm him who is proficient in magic. What is the reason for planning to assassinate me this time? He felt a hint of doubt in his heart, and the situation around him had greatly changed. Young Master be careful. The leader of the Flying Fish sect, the Red Ridge Taoist, had no time to draw his sword and could only thrust forward with his sword scabbard. This old Taoist has been famous for a long time, and his flying fish swordsmanship has been immersed in it for decades. With one move, he is as fast as a shooting star and his momentum is as direct as lightning bolts. At the same time, the owner of the Iron Core martial arts school sitting at the adjacent table, the middle-aged man with a beard under his chin, clasped a chopstick and emitted an electric light. The Red Ridge Taoist and the owner of the Iron Heart martial arts school had a heart to protect He Ping. At this moment, they simultaneously took action. The flying fish sword with a scabbard and chopsticks shot as hidden weapons blocked the young servant who drew the dagger and killed him from both sides. But then, in the blink of an eye, a strange scene occurred. The dagger stabbed at He Ping suddenly turned in direction, like a fish covered in oil, avoiding the scabbard of the Red Ridge Taoist. The next second, the dish in his hand also flew out, blocking the chopsticks. In an instant, a silver cold light burst forth and suddenly attacked the leader of the Huma gang sitting on the right, who was the burly and bearded man. So, this person went to relieve San with the Tingfen blade. Zhao Chen, a Taoist from Chilean and the owner of the Iron Heart martial arts school, suddenly woke up. At the same time, He Ping's fingertips hidden in his sleeves caught a thread that was invisible to the naked eye. He was about to start, but in that moment, he immediately stopped. No wonder there's not much killing intent, it doesn't seem to be targeting me. He Ping frowned, and the scene changed again. The bearded Jia San laughed heartily. You little bastard, you also want to plot against your master Jia. Jia San was an old man in the martial arts world who suddenly encountered unexpected situations. Knowing that he didn't have enough time to adapt, he kicked over the table full of dishes with one foot. With a loud bang, the table flipped over, and countless drinks and dishes were spilled on all sides. The guests at the nearby tables scattered in panic. The servant's movements were also sharp. He slipped and dodged the flying table with ease, without slowing down his speed. He stabbed forward with a knife in his hand, almost rushing towards the side of Understanding 3. Seeking death. Jia Sen held a knife in his left hand and a wine pot in his right hand. He threw the wine pot into the air, swung the scabbard with force, and with a gentle force, swung the wine pot out with a blow from the side of the scabbard. The wine jug flew towards me, and the servant intentionally dodged. However, when the wine jug flew halfway, it cracked open with a click sound, and the porcelain pieces turned into countless hidden weapons and flew away. At this moment, the servant could only make a helpless decision. He stepped back, and as he stepped back, the corner of his third eye lifted upwards, and the unsheathed Tingfeng knife jumped out half of its length, landing on his right hand. The sound of wind hissing and knife roaring was heard, and the onlookers around were blinded. Even before the blade arrived, the sharp blade wind blew over, as if cutting the faces of everyone present hard, like the cold wind in the north. What a Ting Feng Dao, to solve 3, this Sha Tua Kuai Zhan can dominate the northern region for more than 10 years, it's not just a boast. The Red Ridge Taoist and the owner of the Iron Heart Hall, Zhao Chen, were both excited. They were martial artists from the founding sect, and just by seeing Jia San's move, they knew that the opponent's swordsmanship was impressive, with at least 20.30 years of hard work. This Jia San was able to lead the Huma gang and establish a great reputation with a group of homeless northern swordsmen, and also had his own strong ability. In an instant, the light of the Tingfeng knife, Jia San's blade only sliced out half a circle, and before it could cut off the servant's head with a single blow, it suddenly came to an end, and the whirlwind's blade burst open. My knife! Jia San let out a confused and puzzled voice, and his Tingfeng knife in his hand swung halfway, causing a sudden sharp pain on his wrist. The excruciating pain came strangely, with a tingling in the tendons and the tightly held knife being hit by a strong force, flying out and nailing to the floor with a ding sound. As soon as the Tingfeng blade was released, the young servant in green also aimed at the opportunity. With a swipe of the dagger forward, Jia San's neck was cut open, and the burly man's eyes suddenly widened. He opened his mouth, and before he could speak, blood splashed out with a splash. Third Master. The other members of the Huma gang, who were sitting with Jia San, were all swordsmen from the north. When they saw their leader being killed, they were all torn apart and immediately surrounded by 8 swords, like a whirlwind from all directions. The swordsmanship of these members of the Huma gang has been personally trained by Jia San. With a flash of sword light, they stand in position and weave a net of 8 finely forged iron knives. Surrounding this young man in green clothes in the middle, with just a single twist of the knife light, they can twist him into 7 or 8 pieces. Unfortunately, at this moment, the body of the young servant in green suddenly trembled, and his whole body jumped out of the air like a zombie. What? The swordsmen of the Huma gang were all dumbfounded. When it comes to lightness skills, they were not unfamiliar with them, but no one had ever seen such a strange lightness skill. The young man in green didn't even touch the ground and didn't bend his knees. He flew up like this, almost rushing between the beams. Then he spun in mid-air like a bat and flew out silently. Chase! The leading swordsman shouted loudly and rushed out. Unfortunately, the Red Ridge Taoist sighed and glanced at the dead Jia San. The body of the famous sword from the desert was embraced by several swordsmen from the Huma gang. Jia Sanye's swordsmanship is not weak. If it weren't for losing the opportunity, he wouldn't have been like this. Look, what is this? Zhao Chen from the Iron Heart martial arts school stabbed a black ball soaked in blood with chopsticks. He Ping and the Taoist from Chilean approached and found that the ball, which was the size of a fava bean, was clearly a small ball made of messy hair. What a strange hidden weapon, is it this one that pierces through the wrist of understanding 3? Chilean Road was greatly surprised. He Ping remained silent, but his face was clearly gloomy, but he only took a glance and recognized the origin of the black ball. Young master if Third Lord has an accident this time, we must go back immediately and tell Second Lord about it. At this moment, a member of the Huma gang who stayed behind hugged Jia San's body and said in a deep voice, this time Third Lord was taken advantage of by Xiao Xiao. Our Huma gang will avenge Third Lord, so please forgive us for not disturbing him. What you're saying is that Master Jia had an accident with me. I don't know who the thief was, but he actually infiltrated my He family's mansion and committed the crime. This is not the responsibility of the Huma gang, but also the responsibility of our He family. He Ping also let out a deep sigh. On my end, I don't know how to explain such a big incident to the Shen family. The Huma gang's Jia San has taken in several adopted sons, among which the most famous is Shen, the second in charge. His sword techniques are all true to Jia San's teachings, and the 72 roots of Shatua Quick Slash have at least a heat of Jia 30.8%. The Huma gang is a famous gang in the northern desert. In addition to Shen being a powerful character, there are also 3 other adopted sons of Jia San, each with excellent skills. People in the martial arts world are reluctant to provoke them. Don't say that, young master He. Our Huma gang is also very clear about the identity of this thief. Second master is a convenient person, how could he blame young master He? This gang member is clearly the small leader of the Huma gang. He hesitated halfway through his words and only sighed. So, I will leave first and pursue the thief. Please forgive me, young master. It's easy to say. He Ping nodded, but his face was not good. Looking, still gloomy and terrifying. It seemed that this incident had dampened his mood, and there was no mood to continue hosting the banquet. The guests also left one after another. As soon as everyone left, He Ping extended a hand. His 5 fingers were slender, with the same black ball sandwiched between his extended thumb and index finger. Is it a hair-cutting pill? End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Listening to the Way, Seeking the Way, and Entering the Way. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Listening to the Way, Seeking the Way, and Entering the Way. The hair-cutting pill is made from the hair of a woman who died with resentment, and its benefits can cut off gold. After seeing this thing, he guessed its origin almost immediately. However, the Red Ridge Taoist only noticed one of them and did not notice that these 2 were each struck by 2 people. Previously, there were 2 shots of this ball hitting Jia San. The first shot pierced his wrist, and the second shot shook away the knife in his hand. However, the black ball that hit Jia San's wrist and the knife that hit him were not thrown by the same person. The young servant in green was just a sword that flew to understand San. The person who shot through his wrist was another person, who was also in the He family mansion. He looked back at the beam pillars and reached out to grab them in the air, only to touch a thin, invisible thread that hung like spider silk between the beams. Did the young servant in green use these silk threads to fly away? No, he was saved by someone. Interestingly, this is the invisible string of the immortal puppet sect. Unfortunately, this technique is too immature, and the invisible string has not been refined to the point of sending and receiving like the heart, sacrificing to the point of being invisible. It cannot be invisible. What is it called? An invisible string? Ping, who had a hint of sneer at the corner of his mouth, shook his sleeve and left the building. As he walked out of the door, his finger flicked and the stretched transparent silk thread, which was like spider silk, suddenly trembled. Suddenly, the beams were also impacted, and the dust on the top of the beams rustled down. Young master. Outside the pavilion, butler He Fusheng seemed to have been waiting for a long time. Tongyu class is missing a new Dan character. As for that young servant in green was recommended by the side room 3 months ago. Should we investigate this matter further? Ping sat on a chair and lightly tapped the black fan in his left hand. Check it out. Also, send our personnel to investigate the movements of the Huma gang. Shen Er and a few adopted sons of Jia San are not easy to get along with, so I'm afraid they won't let those 2 people go. But I'm curious, what exactly did the Huma gang provoke this time? FHA1 and invisible string are clearly the means of the immortal puppet sect. When Ping realized it, he was also suddenly surprised and mistakenly thought that the immortal puppet sect was going to attack him, feeling extremely wary in his heart. So he remained silent throughout the entire process, not even stopping Jia San from being killed, until he realized that the situation was not like this when the other party fled. Using the technique of the immortal puppet sect, killing a swordsman from the north wouldn't be so troublesome. No matter how powerful the Tingfeng blade Jia San is, it can't stop the puppet spell. He doesn't look down on this northern swordsman either. Jia San's swordsmanship is indeed powerful, but he can only deal with ordinary people. For someone like him who cultivates Taoism, he can easily crush him with just a finger. Even though the Huma gang is considered a strong gang force in the northern region and even in the desert, in the eyes of Ping, they are just a group of ordinary people who have practiced some martial arts, good swordsmanship, and strong equestrian skills. The threshold for cultivation is extremely high. According to the division of the Immortal Puppet Gate, the beginner level of cultivation is divided into lower-level scholar hearing the way, middle-level scholar seeking the way, and upper-level scholar entering the way. Corporal refers to ordinary people in the world. Listening to the Tao, seeking the Tao, and entering the Tao reflect the 3 states of cultivation. The practitioners of the world all start from the ordinary level of hearing the Tao, sitting and grinding day and night, in order to remain calm, move and observe, nourish and strengthen the spiritual power, make the soul more sensitive, and then resonate with the spirit, opening up the gateway of life and death. Only then can they have a trace of the miraculous ability of heaven and human interaction. In the future, one must work diligently and patiently adjust the top and meridians with the patience of dripping water and piercing stones, dissolve all limbs and bones, and stimulate qi. Only then can one have the opportunity to climb to the sky step by step, break free from their own barriers, and enter the realm of seeking the Tao. Taoist monks in Taoist temples and monks in monasteries, whether they are taking qi, practicing qi, breathing, guiding, or meditating, are mostly focused on refining their minds and spirits, and there is nothing special about them. Their methods of killing and attacking are pitifully weak, and any strong man who has practiced martial arts can be beaten to the point of bruises and bruises, causing direct bloodshed. Only by stepping into the level of seeking the way as a sergeant and deepening the spiritual realm of cultivators, can they transform the flesh fetus, supplemented by talismans, spells, witchcraft, and other methods, and use some methods to summon wind and rain, ward off evil and epidemic, and enter and exit water and fire. As for the sergeant, it can be said that he is a master who has entered the realm of Taoism, a true person who can move mountains and seas, turn clouds and rain, and has great magical powers. He Ping has been practicing invisible secrets for many years, and his cultivation has already entered the stage of seeking the way as a sergeant. Combining with the strange and mysterious magic of the immortal puppet sect and the ability to manipulate puppet dolls, his strength is beyond that of ordinary martial artists in the martial world. It is not surprising that he has this confidence. However, he has another layer of concern about what happened today. For example, who are the young servant in green and the playboy hiding in the same jade class? Who are they hiding behind the scenes? Can it be worry-free? He Ping clenched his fist silently. This is also the most concerning point for him. He Ping was very convinced that worry-free life would definitely leave a hand behind him. The spells he practiced had fatal flaws. After he made a cocoon and bound himself and completed the ritual of a living puppet, worry-free life would use puppet techniques to refine him into his own puppet. However, on second thought, he felt that it should not be the case. No, I haven't even succeeded in heart swapping, and it's meaningless for worry-free to take action at this time. His henchmen should wait until I become a living puppet before they can activate it. He Ping's eyes also became suspicious. He is well aware that although he appears to be doing well at present, he is actually in a precarious situation due to his practice of puppet art. Due to the flaws in his own martial arts, he can only refine himself into a living puppet if he wants to survive. However, if he really wants to do so, he will only be calculated by the worry-free life who passed on his puppet art. I have to break through, but my biggest problem now is a lack of intelligence. What He Ping felt the most helpless was that he knew nothing about the intelligence related to the cultivation world. He had been operating in the northern region for many years and did not gather too many clues about the practitioners. Even if he found some information, it was only fragmented and fragmented. If you leave the north, go to Middle-earth and investigate the central capital of the Dayou Dynasty, Yujing City. There is a possibility of obtaining more clues, but unfortunately, my body is not suitable for long-distance travel. Moreover, the power of the He family is limited to this 1 acre and 3 fen of land in Beifu Prefecture. Sitting on the chair, He Ping licked his lips, feeling a bit restless. I need to know more information about worry-free life and the immortal puppet sect. It's not my habit to sit idly by. He pondered deeply, recalling everything that had happened, and suddenly a flash of inspiration flashed through his mind. Wait a moment, did I have a preconception? Based on the current situation, the most likely one is probably someone from another immortal puppet sect. The calculations of worry-free life are not so rough or so conspicuous. If it were the worry-free student, the style of the calculating person would be even more profound and unfathomable, like a gazelle hanging its horn, nowhere to be found. Having come to this point, He Ping's mind suddenly became lively, and he speculated that this matter may not be directly related to Weisheng. Perhaps it should be necessary to find that servant and the person behind him. He Ping muttered thoughtfully to himself. He felt that he should take a risk and gamble on this matter. After all, he had not changed his mind and did not have the prerequisite to become a living puppet through sacrificial refining. Therefore, even when facing the fellow disciples of the immortal puppet sect, there was no need to worry about being caught by worry-free life. Regarding this inference, as someone who has been studying invisible secrets for a long time, he is still somewhat confident. After all, puppetry can only be most effective against puppets, and as long as he is still alive, even the immortal puppetry disciples may not be able to do anything about him. That's right, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Moreover, if this is really a trap, there's nothing to care about. After all, if you succeed in exchanging your heart after killing the unicorn mountain mandrill, it may be when Weisheng's hands erupt. If you don't exchange your heart, you are waiting for death. It's better to take advantage of this opportunity to uncover the secrets of Weisheng and the immortal puppet sect. Outside Suiyan City. There is a small house in the verdant bamboo forest. There is a person lying on the bamboo bed of the cabin. This person is the small shop in green clothes who wiped the Tingfen blade to relieve his neck. Ah Ji, you are too reckless. A woman's voice rang out. I sent you to He Mansion hoping that you would find an opportunity to use the He family and get close to the people of the Shing family. In Suiyan City, the He family's wealthy side is the most able to establish a relationship with the old thief of the Shing family. However, you are skilled in killing and understanding San. Sister, Jia San is the enemy who personally killed our parents. Since I know this villain is going to the banquet, how can I bear it? Ah Ji gritted his teeth, almost squeezing out a voice from between his teeth. Giving him a knife is considered cheap. This thief didn't dig out his heart and liver to pay tribute to his parents. I'm not willing to accept it. You're really acting recklessly. The woman sighed and said, Jia San wants to be killed, and even the dog official of the Shing family wants to be killed. But your reckless actions have disrupted our original plan, and our identities have already been exposed. If we want to infiltrate Suiyan City again, it may be difficult to reach the sky. What are you afraid of? Aji disregarded the knife wound on his body and flipped over from the bed. Can that dog official never leave the city for a lifetime? I don't believe I won't find a chance to kill him. You're thinking too simply. The woman is very helpless. My younger brother's temperament is too reckless. This time, he took a decisive action to kill Jian San, but I also revealed my identity in order to save him. The two were also chased by a group of swordsmen from the Huma gang, and even Shen Er took action. My younger brother, Aji, will get injured, just because he was hit by Shen Er and Shen Xingshir's sand camel blade in his right arm, and also poisoned, which is why he had to hide here to recuperate. The woman furrowed her beautiful eyebrows, her heart still filled with worry. Shen Er is nominally the adopted son of Jia San, but in fact, he is also the intelligence of Jia San's subordinates. His brain is much more powerful than Jia San, a big and rough old man. The group of people from the northern desert of the Huma gang not only have fast swords and strong horses, but also have skilled hunters who are good at tracking. It may not be long before they can find our whereabouts. At this moment, several strings of wind chimes tied to the eaves of the bamboo house moved without wind, and a burst of scattered bells woke her up from her contemplation. Damn it! The woman approached the window and listened attentively. A rustling sound of horses came from outside the bamboo forest, followed by the wind gradually rising. The sound of people shouting and horses hissing could be heard amidst the swaying bamboo leaves. Right here. Those two people. Ye. Catch. They. Don't need to. Live. The woman and Aji looked at each other, probably neither of them expected the pursuers of the Huma gang to come chasing them so quickly. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Paper Doll Art. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Paper Doll Art. The night is already deep. The sound of insects is like boiling, making a noise in the grass, which is different from the noise of the day. Nevertheless, at this point in time, most people in Suiyan City fell asleep. He Ping didn't sleep, not because he was suffering from insomnia or couldn't sleep, but purely because he hardly needed to sleep. There is a Taoist technique called creating soul palace in Invisible Secrets, also known as 9 palaces bright moon ascending the true Dharma. This Taoist technique believes that all things have spirits, and human beings are the most. The spiritual communication of humans comes from the 100 sections of the Dantian around the body, and there is a room of 9 truths hidden in the mud pills of the upper Dantian, which is called the 9 palaces. These 9 palaces are Mingtang Palace, Dongfang Palace, Naiwan Palace, Luzhu Palace, Tianting Palace, Jizhen Palace, Danxian Palace, Taihuang Palace, and Jade Emperor Palace. This secret technique is specifically designed to meditate and concentrate the mind, transforming the true spiritual light in the divine soul into a bright moon, illuminating the 9 palaces of the upper Dantian like adding oil and lighting a lamp, gradually illuminating these 9 palaces, which is called the Soul Creation Palace. This Taoist technique is specifically used to exercise the sensitivity of the soul, strengthen the wisdom of thinking, and ultimately operate the divine soul to comprehend the Tao. Practicing it will bring benefits of 1,000 miles in a day. After so many years, the 9-palace moon ascension technique of Yiping has become increasingly successful. As early as a few years ago, 8 soul palaces, namely, Mud Pill, Bright Hall, Bridal Chamber, Flowing Pearl, Heavenly Court, Extreme Truth, Dan Xian, and Jade Emperor Palace, have been illuminated one after another. However, for some reason, the final, Imperial Palace, has yet to make progress according to the statement of Weisheng. After the creation of the 9 soul palaces, there is a chance to step into the realm of Tao, ascend to the sky with one step, and become unpredictable in cultivation, possessing various incredible powers. However, Yiping himself is still far from that step, which may be due to the shortcomings of Invisible Secret Collection itself, or it may be due to excessive depletion of his own essence, unable to light up the Imperial Palace and break through the final level in one fell swoop. But he also has a completely different ability, or rather a trait, due to his own constitution. It is worth mentioning that his biggest difference from ordinary people actually stems from his identity as a traveler. He also discovered this after practicing in the Soul Creation Palace, which is that he has 2 souls. One of the souls is naturally the soul through which his soul passes, while the other soul is the original owner of this body, the true soul of Yiping, the son of the He family. However, unlike his own soul, the original body of Yiping's soul exuded a sense of stillness, confused and devoid of any vitality. Yiping didn't know why it was like this. Perhaps his original body Yiping had already died when his soul pierced through, but the soul of the 7 or 8-year-old child still survived, only becoming a state of confusion and ignorance. Yiping tried to stimulate the soul of his original body, but it was of no use. The soul of his original body was like an empty shell egg, empty inside, without any spiritual preservation. However, what is strange is that after he practiced the Soul Creation Palace Taoist art, Yiping gradually discovered that he could control the soul of his original body, or rather, the soul of his original body, to become his secondary soul. This situation cannot be described in words, and Yiping himself cannot explain it. This deputy soul, under his intentional control, can handle various affairs. For example, he can use this shell-like soul to cultivate the Taoist art of creating a soul palace, or give it some simple commands to control his body on his behalf. This hollow soul can be used for both distractions, such as controlling left and right hands to do different things, or sleeping while running, reading 2 books at the same time, and so on. Perhaps it is also this empty shell soul that lacks intelligence and can only do some simple work, but it is also of great help to Yiping. Perhaps it is because Yiping was born with 2 souls, and the secret technique of creating a soul palace is extremely powerful. After practicing, Yiping hardly needs to sleep. When he is tired, he exchanges with an empty shell soul and takes a little rest. Otherwise, let the empty shell soul replace him to sleep, which can also maintain mental stability for a long time. On the other hand, Yiping suspects that his fast cultivation speed and excessive consumption of energy and spirit may be due to his possession of dual souls. At this moment, nestled in his own room, he was holding a red pen in his hand, nodding his eyes. Yes, he is catching several paper dolls made of specially made bamboo paper, which are boned and covered with paper. These paper dolls are usually used as burial objects for the deceased and will be burned at the 7th hour of the head. There is a long-standing folk rule in the paper doll industry, which is very strange and peculiar, that is, it cannot give the paper doll the finishing touch in its eyes. As the saying goes, adding the finishing touch, many people believe that once a paper puppet is added, it will have spiritual energy, which can easily attract ghosts and spirits to attach to it, causing ominous consequences. However, for cultivators like Yiping, this kind of thing is naturally not a concern. He used a blood ink stone to polish the ink while waving a pen to add finishing touch to the paper doll. With a little red pen, he pinched the magic formula while murmuring, and with his spell, the originally expressionless paper dolls showed different expressions one after another. Just like a group of living people, the dozen paper dolls in the wing room were originally dead, but with a gentle touch of the cinnabar pen, they all came to life at this moment. The paper puppet occasionally showed a strange smile, some with an angry expression, some with a sorrowful expression, and some with a sad expression. There were also very few paper dolls with twisted faces, showing a look of extreme fear. People have 5 internal organs that transform the 5 chi to generate joy, anger, sadness, and fear. Therefore, joy, anger, and cold and heat damage the chi and form. Anger and anger damage yin, while joy and heat damage yang. Ju chi rises and fills the meridians and forms. Joy and anger are not balanced, and excessive cold and heat lead to unstable birth. Under the candlelight, He Ping's weak and pale face suddenly revealed a faint smile. Having collected so many materials and spent a lot of money, this paper puppet spirit puppet technique can be put to use. These paper puppets, named paper puppet spirit puppetry in the Invisible Secret Collection of the Immortal Puppet Sect, originally belonged to the branch of the paper tying craftsman's magic, but were later absorbed and improved by the Immortal Puppet Sect. The puppets recorded in the volume Invisible Secrets come in various forms and types, including powerful or mysterious puppets. The paper puppet technique is not a superior puppet technique. The 3-corpse secret demon puppets, diamond demon terracotta figures, emperor's divine weapon, and pulling machine armored beasts recorded in the Jufan scroll are far stronger than the paper puppet technique. But the paper puppet spirit puppet technique has one advantage, which is that it is easier to make and the manufacturing time is also shorter. Of course, all of this is compared to the refining time of other puppets. For He Ping, the paper puppet spirit puppet technique requires a lot of manpower and material resources just by making sufficient preparations. Firstly, the material used to make paper puppets and spiritual puppets is a special type of silk. The common paper made from mulberry bark, mountain bark, and tree bark is mostly used. The process of making paper is not only complex, but also expensive. During the process of making paper, it is necessary to supplement it with the tree oil of ironwood and precious medicinal wine before use. However, the advantage of this type of paper is that it is not afraid of cutting with knives and weapons, nor is it afraid of burning fire and rain. Moreover, the paper is exceptionally tough, and after being refined with spells, it has the wonderful effect of summoning souls and soul. With this kind of paper figurines made of paper, the performer only needs to summon ghosts and spirits, attach them to these paper figurines, and then use magic to drive them. These paper figurines can come and go like the wind, without being penetrated by knives or guns, and have various powerful abilities that ordinary people cannot match. This alone is not enough. The most unique feature of paper dolls is that they need to absorb 5 types of evil energy, mix happiness, anger, sadness, and fear, take their spiritual samadhi, and refine the yin spirit into a spell. At this point, the power of this paper doll will greatly increase. It can also release a spell flame and form an array when facing enemies, specifically enchanting the 6 desires, confusing their gods, and confusing their intelligence, which can also be considered a powerful spell. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Paper Doll Spirit Puppet. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Paper Doll Spirit Puppet. The paper puppet spirit puppet technique has been refined to some extent. He Ping has a total of 25 paper puppets in his hands, which can be controlled by magic and can also form formations, adding a touch of supernatural power. At this moment, He Ping stood next to a paper doll and reached out to pat its shoulder. "Go ahead, bring your companions and bring me the sedan chair." This paper puppet spirit puppet has a bitter face, giving people an inexplicable expression of sadness. It is wearing a red high hat and holding a paper lantern in its hand. Inside the lantern is a dark green cold flame, which is a spell cold flame that absorbs ghosts and sacrifices spiritual emotions. In the lantern, a green glow shines like phosphorus ghostly fire, illuminating the surroundings with dense yin energy. He Ping patted him on the shoulder, causing the puppet to sway slightly. Then it began to move like a float and walked towards the main door of the wing. Shwa shwa shwa. The sound of breaking the wind came, and several paper dolls followed behind the bitter-faced paper dolls, floating out the door. He Ping put on a black hooded robe and opened the drawer to take out a sticky paper mask. The mask was painted with a funny face, with rough brushstrokes resembling a child's graffiti. He extended his right hand and put the ghost face mask on his own face. After completing all of this, He Ping walked out of the wing room. The courtyard outside is very large and spacious, but no one dares to approach the He family because He Ping has issued an order not to enter this courtyard at night. The servants in the mansion don't come here to clean up on weekdays. They only see a courtyard full of weeds, like 110 fireflies dancing, or like a tomb filled with ghostly flames. At this moment, a snow-white sedan chair was carried over by several flying figures and landed directly in front of the door of the wing. This is a sedan chair made of paper. The paper sedan chair has a unique shape and is also made very exquisitely. Even so, the first person who sees this paper sedan chair may mistake it for a toy made of paper. He Ping, wearing a paper ghost face mask, lifted the paper curtain and sat inside. After pulling up the paper curtain, he served the 8 paper spiritual puppets on the left and right, holding a paper lantern lit with a magic candle in one hand, and moving forward with his feet, he lifted the sedan chair like this. Shwa shwa shwa. Other paper dolls in the wing also appeared one after another, and these paper dolls with different expressions gathered behind the sedan chair, forming a strange team. Sitting in the paper sedan chair, He Ping took a deep breath. He was fully prepared. This paper sedan chair and these paper dolls were also his trump card, and there was also a secret card hidden inside the sedan chair to suppress the box. He decided to investigate the whereabouts of the servant and uncover the immortal puppet disciples behind the scenes. Get up the sedan chair, let's go. Under He Ping's mask, his eyes were completely indifferent. He let out a low cry, and the paper sedan chair quickly moved. In an instant, it lost its shape in the courtyard. It can be said that as soon as the upper and lower eyelids met, it disappeared. In a strange space filled with grey mist, a paper sedan chair carrying 8 large sedans moved slowly like an ox cart. The mist is boundless and endless, but in the space near the paper sedan chair, a corridor that can be traversed in the mist appears to be a one-way passage. Beside the paper sedan chair were a group of paper dolls, each with different expressions and eerie movements. The only commendable thing was that the paper dolls were diligent and tireless, carrying lanterns in one hand while carrying the sedan chair, moving non-stop. If anyone else sees this scene, they may only feel an indescribable coldness and terror. This paper sedan chair is also a magic technique of the immortal puppet sect, called paper puppet lift sedan chair technique. Just sit on this paper sedan chair and come and go in a flash, as if shrinking 1,000 miles to the present. This spell does not come from a Taoist sect, but is somewhat similar to the folk ritual of the 5 ghosts lifting the sedan chair. After completing this spell cultivation, people only need to secretly cast spells inside the sedan chair, and 4 ghosts will lift themselves, with 1 ghost holding a flag leading the way and freely coming and going within 1,000 miles. However, these 5 ghost sedan chair lifting spells also have some drawbacks. The first point is that this spell can only be used at night, because most ghosts can only move at night. The second point is that this spell drives demons and ghosts, which cannot hear the chirping of chickens or dogs. If they do, the driven ghost soldiers will leave you unattended. Legend has it that in the past, someone practiced this side magic and drove the 5 ghosts to steal property. Due to greed, they packed too many things, so when they rushed back, the sky had gradually turned white. As a result, on the return journey, I heard a loud rooster crowing before I arrived home. The 5 ghosts who lifted the sedan chair all ran away, and the sedan chair suddenly fell from a high altitude, causing the person to fall and die. Unlike this 5 ghost sedan chair lifting technique, the paper puppet sedan chair lifting technique of the immortal puppet gate is much safer. The paper puppet person is also similar to driving ghosts and soldiers, but it is attached to the paper puppet and can be used during the day because it has a body shape and is not afraid of rooster crowing and dog barking. Moreover, the 5 ghosts lift the sedan chair technique relies on the 5 ghosts flying in the air, making it easy to fall and die. The paper puppet lift the sedan chair technique does not rely on flying, but rather travels through the underworld, with faster speed and reduced danger. The underworld, also known as the underworld, Yin-Yang realm, or Yuluo realm, is a world shrouded in gray mist. The paper puppet sedan chair lifting technique can open a passage and travel through this so-called underworld, with incredible speed and lightning speed. In the paper sedan chair, He Ping is casting a spell to track the whereabouts of the young servant in green, Aji. In his sedan chair, there is a silk map hanging in mid-air, covering the terrain and landforms of an area hundreds of miles around Swayan City. He took out a small bamboo box from his arms and took out a small wooden snail from inside. With a gentle flick of his finger, the wooden top landed on the silk map, like a pearl spinning on a plate, spinning rapidly. Finally, the wooden top swung around and settled in a position on the map. Is it moving in this direction? He picked up the map and gazed carefully. There was a curved mark on the silk map, which was the sharp corner of the gyroscope, swishing swish 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 swish, drawing the route on the map. This is the tracking technique of the immortal puppet sect, similar to the divination technique of the FUL in the Dao sect. However, the general techniques of the FUL and FUG are based on the use of a red tray to support the sand, with a T-shaped frame placed on top and a hanging cone at the end, allowing the cone to write characters in the sand and ask questions about ghosts and gods. The tracking technique of He Ping simplified the technique of FUL, which only requires the use of gyroscopes and silk maps to find the opponent's escape trajectory and direction. It seems that after escaping to the Wuzulan, they are heading northwest again. Wait a moment, what's going on here? Why have they been circling in this direction since escaping here? He Ping looked at the map with both eyes and noticed that the small shop in Qingyi, Ji, seemed to be constantly circling in a certain area. Could it be that something went wrong? He frowned and pondered for a moment, but inexplicably had a bad guess, so he ordered the paper sedan chair to accelerate its speed. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Ghost Wolf Jia. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Ghost Wolf Jia. As soon as the sky darkened, the mountains and forests became dim. In the middle of the night, if there is no moonlight or starlight in the sky, walking deep into the mountains will be even more dark. A group of people from the Huma gang formed a cavalry team, led by the second leader Shen Xingshi, riding a jujube red steed and leading more than 40 members of the gang out of the east gate of Swayan City. All members of this cavalry team are skilled in swordsmanship and horsemanship. Shen Xingshi ordered his subordinates to bring along mastiffs and falcons to track down the whereabouts of the killer of Jia San. The swordsmen in the northern desert are mixed with good and bad, and they don't follow the path of chivalry. The swordsmen are also called swordsman bandits by the people of the northern government, which means they are considered wealthy when entering the city, and bandits when leaving the city. The Huma gang's group of swordsmen are no exception, including those from strong backgrounds in cutting paths and merchants, who are also good at sniffing the wind and hunting. The Ji, young servant in green, along with his sister, escaped from the Wuzhu forest and was chased around by the Huma gang led by Shen Xingshi, like dogs chasing chickens, in a panic and no choice. Qingji and Qingyujiao, these two siblings from the Qing family have some skills, and I don't know where they learned their techniques. Unfortunately, even ordinary sorcerers can't stop arrows and crossbows. In my team, I also have a few archers. No matter what kind of illusion or magic, if you shoot them randomly, they will still be shot into hedgehogs. Shen Xingshi is the eldest adopted son of Jia San, and he is very shrewd. He knows that if his siblings dare to come and seek revenge against him, they must have relied on him. However, he was also prepared and not afraid of the sorcerer methods of becoming a siblings. He had been wandering the martial arts world for many years and had seen several sorcerers. He believed that these people were just playing tricks and illusions, and in terms of true abilities, he could not match his sword techniques that he had been immersed in for many years. Most of the other swordsmen in the Huma gang also hold this mentality and do not think that having siblings is a powerful figure. On the way, they rode their horses through a mountain depression when suddenly a gust of wind and sand blew in. The wind and sand came quickly, and the members of the Huma gang felt their faces burning and their eyes couldn't open. What kind of ghost wind is this? Someone was riding on a horse, blown by the wind, with a piercing chill on his face. He opened his mouth and spat phlegm at the ground. The moonlight and starlight are all invisible. Shenxingshi noticed something was not quite right. He looked around and found that the mountain depression was filled with patches of locust wood, also known as een wood. The people also separated its characters and believed that Hui wood was ghost wood. This mountain valley is often devoid of sunlight, and at first glance, it is a gathering place for een energy. Just standing at the mouth of the valley makes people shiver uncontrollably. After riding their horses for a while, they found a piece of earth-walled bungalow deep in the mountain valley, which seemed to be the size of a town, but clearly a bit desolate and dilapidated. Tap, 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 horses stepped on the yellow mud path into the village one after another, and everyone inspected it before confirming that it was indeed an abandoned village. Whether it was the collapsed ruins, the overgrown weeds and the cracks of the tiles, or the desolate and uninhabited houses, all seemed to prove that this place had been uninhabited for a long time. It's strange. The two siblings who got married also rode horses here, but once they got here, the hoof prints couldn't be found. A swordsman from the Huma gang is skilled at tracking, able to identify the footprints of various beasts, and can detect flying feathers at the slightest sight. His eyes are even comparable to those of eagles and falcons. After dismounting, this person searched around with a lantern, but did not find any trace. Shenxingshi looked at the members of the gang leading the mastiff, who also shook their heads. How could he possibly run far after being injured by a knife and poisoned again? The second leader of the Huma gang pondered for a moment before speaking again. Those two people can't escape far, it's very likely they're hiding here. The village is quite large and the terrain is a bit complicated. We'll divide into 3 teams and slowly search here. I don't believe we can't catch them. Yes. The members of the Huma gang responded and divided into 3 columns, one moving to the left and the other moving to the right. Shenxingshi led one column to search and capture along the middle route. The village was quiet, with over a dozen dilapidated thatched and earthen houses scattered together. Several grey and earthen walls had collapsed with a gap, revealing a faint view of empty black houses. The end of the long street is far away, with continuous grey-walled earthen houses standing in groups, and the night wind blowing brings out a whining sound. It's all so strange to say. We've run to many places in the territory of Beifu Prefecture, and we've walked around Suian City many times. Why haven't we heard of this place before? A swordsman wearing a bamboo hat was holding a reed pole in his mouth, leading the reins of a horse. His gaze wandered around under the lowered bamboo hat, and his right hand was also resting on the handle of the knife. This swordsman, named Yu Peng, is the most alert person and is assigned to be at the back of the team to be responsible for cushioning. The person in front walked forward with lanterns, and the swordsman wearing a bamboo hat, Yu Peng, followed behind calmly. Just as the group passed through a thick poplar tree, Yu Peng suddenly stopped in his tracks and his whole body remained in place. He had an extra hemp rope around his neck at some point, and the front end of the rope was tied into a rope loop, hanging down from the tree. Ah! Yu Peng was strangled by a rope around his neck bone making a clicking sound, and his body was pulled up by a tremendous force. His hands were desperately picking at the rope, his legs were also kicking non-stop, and he couldn't breathe, and his voice couldn't be heard. Next, the rope hanging from the tree pulled upwards, and the whole person was dragged into the air. In the next second, the person disappeared. The leaves of the poplar tree, known as ghost clapping hands, trembled with a splash, and Shenxingshi, who was riding a horse in front, frowned slightly. He turned his head and with just a glance, he realized that there was one person missing from the queue holding lanterns. What about Yu Pengren? Isn't he staying at the back? As soon as he spoke these words, everyone in the team realized that the swordsman Yu Peng, who was staying at the end of the team, was nowhere to be found. Where are people? Someone turned their head and found that Yu Peng, who was walking at the end of the queue, was nowhere to be found. Is the horse still here? Yu Peng's horse is still in place, leisurely staying under the big tree. The horse surnamed Yu is the most precious. How could he run away without saying a word? The members of the gang looked at each other, feeling a bit suspicious. It wasn't even in the blink of an eye, how could people be so gone? Not good. Shen Xingshir's heart skipped a beat and he shouted loudly. Things are not right. Draw your sword, be on guard, and quickly form a circular formation. After all, it was the swordsman who had been wandering in the northern region for many years. When Huma gang heard Shen Er's words, their hearts trembled and they immediately dared not show any carelessness. They formed a circle in the center of the street, silently pulling out their swords and sheathing them one after another. Blow the ghost wolf Jia and notify the other two teams to return. There is a problem with this village. At the command of Shen Xingshi, one of the swordsmen took out a blood-red Hu Jia from his arms. This was the ghost wolf Jia of the Huma gang, which runs through the northern desert. When played, it sounded like ghosts crying and wolves howling, and was a common means of communication among the gang members. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Blocking the road. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Blocking the road. In the remote and sparsely populated areas of the northern desert, the Huma gang usually uses the sound of ghost wolf Jia as a secret code for easy communication during their operations. The swordsman took out his Hu Jia and played the sound of the Jia. Woo-woo. With the sudden tremble of the wind, the unique tone of Gui Lang Jia began to sound. The sound was strange at first, as if a needle had been inserted into the ear, extremely uncomfortable. This Hu Jia is sometimes high and melodious, intermittent and intermittent. Ordinary people cannot understand the secret code in the sound of the Jia, but the members of the Huma gang are familiar with it. As long as there is a radius of several miles, once the members of the Huma gang hear the summoning of the ghost wolf Jia, they must immediately arrive. In case of delay or disregard, they must be dealt with seriously according to the gang rules. Originally, the ghost wolf wind had been blowing for so long, and those two separate groups of people should have rushed over with all their might. However, after half a pillar of incense, Shen Xingshi and a group of Huma gang swordsmen did not receive any response from the village. Shen Er, the head of the village, had a gloomy face. He stood in the middle of the road, paying attention to the two intersections in front and behind the street, but there was no movement for a long time. There were no extra voices of people or horses in the village, only a dead silence. No. Suddenly, a member of the Huma gang seemed to have thought of something and their eyes widened in fear. I remember, there was a rumor in the area of Beifu Prefecture that a village was once hit by a disaster, and all the men, women, and children in the village were spared. Later, for some unknown reason, this isolated village turned into a ghost village. This person's mouth seems to be unable to stop speaking. The people of Beifu Prefecture call this ghost village a wandering soul village. This village has become an elite, not rooted in its original site, but wandering around like it has long legs, with unpredictable movements that have harmed countless people for hundreds of years. He murmured softly, the wandering soul fortress is hard for souls to return to. If they can enter, they cannot leave. Life has no roots, death has no graves. What are you talking nonsense about? His companions around him were furious. What ghosts, gods? I've been wandering the desert for so many years, why haven't I ever encountered them? Don't talk nonsense here. Before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by a strange and sharp laughter that stretched out his voice. He. Everyone was taken aback, listening attentively, looking around and suddenly realizing that this strange laughter seemed to be coming from a nearby house. Who's there? Play around and come out. With a wave of his right hand, Shen Xingshi struck several locust stones and threw them into the room on the left, only making a clattering sound as the earthenware jar shattered. No one. He was stunned for a moment, but couldn't help feeling chills all over his body, not because of the temperature. He. Sharp laughter came out from the mud-walled thatched cottage on the right, and Shen Xingshi's face twisted to the right, facing the right side of the long street. He shivered fiercely, goosebumps rising all over his body, and the cold air seeped in like a sickly ice. He saw a face emerging from behind a earthen wall by the street. If it's just a face, it's nothing, but this face, along with its facial features, is as big as a wheel, like a big grinding wheel. The swordsmen present were one after another, all of them desperately widened their eyes, looking at this strange giant face with an incredulous expression. He. More laughter drifted in from all directions with sharp sounds. Some were like old people, children, women, wolves or foxes howling, and some couldn't even tell what kind of monster's laughter it was. Sitting on the horse, Shen Xingshi's pupils contracted for a moment, and he felt a sense of fear in his heart. He could only feel the dark currents surging around him, and it was hard not to believe that his group of people had truly entered a forbidden place where evil spirits and ghosts were lurking. Did we really accidentally break into the Wandering Soul Fortress? Wandering Soul Fortress. A forbidden area for strangers to avoid. At the end of this long street, there stands an ancient temple quietly. The plaque hanging in front of the ancestral hall is tilted to one side, and the 4 large characters of Chen Clan Ancestral Hall are faintly visible. The ground was covered with thick leaves, and when the wind blew, it spun and rolled up pieces of leaves, as if they were paper money used for mourning. In this ancestral hall, dirty white silk is hung everywhere, densely hanging in various directions. Whenever there is a gap on the wall, courtyard, or beam column, white silk is hanging. This place has been uninhabited for a long time, but it emits a smell of burning incense candles and paper money. Sister, how long will we hide here? Chengji's voice is as low as a mosquito or a gnat. During the day. I hope we can go out by then. His sister answered in a low, haggard voice. Chengji could tell that sister probably doesn't have much confidence either. After all, they really broke into a very dangerous location in order to escape. The Wandering Soul Ghost Village. Turns out the legend is true. Also, how did sister find this place? Chengji's heart is filled with confusion. At this moment, he is hiding in the temple on the long street of the Wandering Soul Village, and it is the deepest hidden room in the temple. This room, like other parts of the ancestral hall, is hung with white silk, the only difference being that there is a table here. The desktop is adorned with layers of black spirit cards. Chengji and his sister Cheng Yujiao hid under the table with a plaque, which was also the safest place in the temple. This is the Wandering Soul Fortress. We want to avoid those surnamed Shen on this trip. There is no other way but to rely on this ghost fortress. Cheng Yujiao tightly bit his lips. If someone surnamed Shen dares to come in, he is determined not to go back alive. If it weren't for the end of the mountain and the water, why would the 2 siblings choose the most dangerous path? But it seems like we can't get out either. Chengji could only smile wryly. His gaze peeked out from the foot of the table, and not far from the table where the spiritual tablet was placed, he could see a pair of feet wearing black cloth shoes, stepping on the floor. If the camera continued to move up, he could see the owner of the feet wearing a black dress, holding a tattered black umbrella, standing strangely in the center of the temple. It's like deliberately blocking their way. In the eerie village, the Yin wind sobbed low, blowing several rough windows and wooden doors that kept shaking. At the eastern entrance of the village, a mist suddenly drifted in, and then strange figures were seen carrying a paper sedan chair, straight into the Wandering Soul Village. Is there really something strange about this place? He Ping in the sedan chair used magic to track and finally found this wandering soul fortress. Although he was in the sedan chair, he had already realized that this wandering soul fortress was not simple. This place should be 30 miles away from Swayan City. How come I have never heard of a long-abandoned village on this land boundary? He Ping's eyes were a bit gloomy. If he had known that the interior of the wandering soul fortress was so eerie, he might not have chosen to break in voluntarily, but would have stayed on the periphery to observe. But this eerie village is a ghost realm, with seemingly unrelated connections to the underworld. His paper puppet spirit puppet technique also relies on the convenience of the underworld to travel between the yin and yang realms. During the process of traversing the underworld, the sedan chair is swept into this village by a vortex-like force. He Ping's face was very unpleasant, which was exactly the opposite of his plan. He was a very cautious person, and this time he was just taking a gamble on his luck to see if he could find something. Getting into trouble recklessly was not his habit. The chi in this area is exceptionally chaotic, and there is also a ghost-hitting wall on the periphery. This should be a ghost realm parallel to the underworld. If I want to forcefully break it open, I'm afraid it will consume a lot of energy. It's better to wait until the day, when the sun is shining high and the yin energy is greatly reduced, and then break it again. It's much simpler. Under normal circumstances, this is the best solution, but it may not be the case now. He Ping can feel the strong hostility emanating from this ghost realm. This hostility is not aimed at him, but at all the living people who have entered this area. End of this chapter.